Hello, everyone. Welcome to a special edition of VLGA Connect. I'm pleased to have with me Kathryn Arndt, the CEO of the VLGA. Kathryn, welcome.
Good morning, Chris. How are you today?
Very well, thank you. And we are delighted to have with us the Victorian Ombudsman Deborah Glass to talk about the recent report looking at financial hardship policies and how councils manage that responsibility. Deborah, hello, thank you and welcome.
Hello, good to be here.
So you've released your report last week. Kathryn and I will do a bit of a tag team on a couple of questions about the process that you used. Firstly, perhaps if you could tell us, why did you decide to do this review or this investigation at this particular time?
Well, it's not a new topic for the Ombudsman. It's a theme, a regular theme, complaints about financial hardship, complaints about how councils deal with ratepayers in hardship. So it's something that that we have been getting for as long as I've been in the job. But with the pandemic, onset of the pandemic last year, it became, I think, more necessary to ask the question, how are councils dealing with ratepayers in hardship? So I was keen to take a look to see how fair and reasonable people's practices were.
Were there any particular complaints that you were receiving that led to partly your decision to do the review at this time?
I think the fact that it's been a steady stream. It's been on my radar for a long time, for some years, and it's something that I've been thinking about investigating systemically, actually for some years. So the trigger was not so much a specific complaint, because we get them regularly, but the consideration of the impact of the pandemic. If this is an issue. If this has always been an issue, well, will it be more of an issue now? So it seemed very timely to take a look at that.
So Deborah, just I guess following that through, and given that you had thought about this issue for a while, can you tell us a little bit about the scope of this particular review?
Well, very simply, all 79 local councils in Victoria. Let's look. One of the things that people always raise with us, and this will not surprise you, any council listening to this, is what drives the public crazy sometimes. Financial counsellors and others who deal with different councils, is everybody does it differently. So that was really quite a strong sort of underlying area that people wanted us to look at.
And that's really an interesting point you make there about, every council does do it differently. It's quite a complicated area when we think of the rate system. Are there some systemic opportunities, I guess, when we look at that every council's doing things differently? How is that perceived by the ratepayer? Did any of that come through in your audit?
It was particularly an issue for financial counsellors who deal with different councils. And some of them, they were saying to us, some people are absolutely exemplary when dealing with people at hardship. Some councils are terrific, and they gave us some good examples. But others are punitive. They use the word Dickensian. And what came through for them is that a ratepayer in a similar situation of financial hardship will be treated very differently by different councils, and that doesn't make any sense.
Deborah, one of your recommendations was requiring councils to have a hardship policy. That surprised me, because I sort of thought, I didn't realise that it wasn't a requirement, but did you find councils that didn't have them at all? Yes,
there are some that don't have them at all. Most councils do have a hardship policy. Some of them aren't very accessible. So in some cases, it took quite a bit of digging, through people's websites to find the policies. So there were issues about accessibility. So most have a policy. Not everybody can find them. But there were other examples we came across where, although the council had a policy, when we were asking about particular practices, what we were told was not in line with the policy on the website. So, there were issues there as well.
Deborah, with the introduction of the Local Government Act that came in last year, are you seeing any opportunities for, some of these practices to be addressed as part of the implementation of that legislation?
Well, I would hope there are opportunities there. I think, but at the moment, it would still require some further reform, in my view, to really address these issues.
So can you tell us a little bit about that? You know, what are some of those reforms that you would recommend or see necessary?
Well, having a set of consistent standards, I think, is a really important area. A requirement to have a policy, a requirement that some core standards around that policy. So one of the recommendations I've made is for the Essential Services Commission to be involved with government, with the local government minister. The Essential Services Commission has considerable experience already in dealing with hardship, in setting standards that regulates the energy and water sectors, and of course it deals with local government as well. So bringing them in to get the benefit of their experience dealing with this, to work on a set of core standards that councils should all be able to follow is a key recommendation.
I was going to ask Deborah, if the state did have a role to play in this, and I'm actually meeting with the Essential Services Commission this week, so I look forward to talking to her a little bit more about, how the different agencies can work together to support the sector to do this better.
So, Deborah, you also make some comment on the use of debt collection agencies. Can you tell us a bit about what you found there and what concerns you about the way they're used?
Again, a lack of oversight. Some councils simply pass the buck to debt collection agencies. And for people in hardship, this is pretty scary stuff. Fundamentally, if I can step back a moment, I think before we get to the situation where we're engaging with debt collectors, I think one of the most disturbing findings of this investigation is that you've got banks and utility companies doing it better than local councils. Now, I think that should concern us. Mm. And so, so one of the points there is, there is a lot of good practice out there. This is not this is not a new area. This is not something where we have to reinvent the wheel. There is good practice within councils, within other sectors, about how to deal with people in hardship. And fundamentally, it's about helping people to pay their rates rather than punishing them for not being able to pay.
Deborah, why do you think the local government sector is, well, from what you've observed, a little behind other agencies who do this? It's not as if the collection of rates has been a new thing for the sector. No. I'm perplexed as to why we're lacking there.
Well, I think quite possibly because the microscope hasn't been turned on them the way it has been on the banks and utility companies. I mean, other companies have really been forced to change their ways of doing things because they've been exposed as wholly unacceptable. But I mean, let me just give you a few examples. So, some of the things that people have said to us, in the energy and water sectors, for example, if you can't pay your rates, it's seen as a customer service issue as opposed to a finance issue. This is, how do you work with the customer to help them to pay? Whereas in local councils, finance teams will issue the rates bill. If people can't pay, they will go through whatever motions the council has in its policy to get that debt. Without seeing it as actually, is there a reason here why this person can't pay the bill, and how do I work with them to enable them to pay us?
That's a very interesting observation. Did you receive any feedback from councils that suggested they were fine? That the collection of outstanding debts was I guess really important in what is now a rate capped environment?
No doubt about that, and I absolutely accept that to many councils, particularly smaller and rural councils that don't have the buffer of other forms of income, that rates are actually vital, and rates income is vital, and they are less flexible than other councils in how they deal with that. And I absolutely accept it. But this actually is about getting people to be able to pay their rates rather than, as I say, punishing them for not being able to pay. So it's working with the ratepayer to get the revenue.
That's right. And I mean, even if the cap was removed, it doesn't address the issue that there will still be residents who are unable to pay their rates and therefore, require the support of council to work with them through hardship policies and other mechanisms to support them to do that in some way.
Deborah, can we talk a bit about some of the recommendations you've made? I asked before about debt collection agencies, but also you're talking about potentially capping the ability to charge high penalty interest, those sorts of things. How do you see those playing out?
Well, let's look at the kind of scenario that we saw time and time again in this investigation. You have somebody who who is in hardship and can't pay their rates. One of the things, again, that I think many people involved in this, perhaps the finance officers in local councils don't appreciate, is that people in hardship tend not to ask for help. They're embarrassed, they're ashamed, and they will leave great piles of unopened envelopes, on a side table somewhere, because they don't know what to do with it. So, the next thing they know, they've got penalty interest loaded on, they've got legal fees loaded on, and they are further and further in debt without it, and it's to the point where for some people, the interest and the legal fees may amount to more than the original rates debt. So I think understanding the psychology of how people react to hardship is also important, and it touches on the customer service point I was making before. Mm. But yes, broadly to go back to your question, what I expect to see, and my recommendations are around, is not only having a set of core standards for dealing with hardship, it's dealing with a full suite of options available in legislation. At the moment, too many councils simply see payment plans as the only thing they're prepared to offer. And those payment plans may not even be practical to the amount of money that people are able to put up to the payment plan. So again, they're doomed to fail if the payment plan doesn't accord with their income from a practical standpoint. So not using discretion is another key area. The discretion, which you'd expect to happen very rarely, but still it's a discretion around waivers and deferrals. Some councils have a blanket policy of refusing them or not consider them at all. And again, that's not right.
So what do you expect to happen with these recommendations? Are you expecting the state government to take a position on some of the things that you've recommended here? Absolutely,
and I'll certainly be following up on those. I mean, the recommendation is for the Essential Service Commission to take a role. Now, that's a matter for ministers. I would like to see that happen, but the real issue here is, where is this? We need a broadly enforceable set of standards so that at the least our local government sector should be operating on a par with energy and water.
Kathryn, any final question?
Look, I think that last point that Deborah has made is really important. The state government, of course, creates local government through a Local Government Act. There's an opportunity to support the sector to be at the standard of other agencies when it comes to all of the way, the way in which it conducts its business generally. And I guess from the VLGA's perspective, we look forward to working with the integrity agencies, the Ombudsman, and also the state government to assist the sector to be able to do their business in a way that meets contemporary best practice, and look forward to, I guess, some of those discussions that you have with the Essential Services Commission and the state government.
Deborah, before we let you go, what's next on your list in terms of inquiries that might impact on the local government sector?
Well, I'm sure the local government would like to be left alone for a while, but it will always be. We'll always be looking at issues in local government because it is such a large percentage of our complaints, and of course it's the tier of government that engages most closely with the public. So it's inevitable. But what I would just flag, and I hope this will be helpful, in fact, to local government, we've been working for some time, and also in view of the new legislation, on an updated good complaints handling guide, and the purpose of that is to help the sector do it better, to learn from mistakes. We're providing a lot of what I hope people will regard as really useful guidance.
And look, that might be something that we can have yourself or one of your team back on a VLGA Connect program just to talk to that guide, because it is those tools and that educative function of the integrity agencies that I think are really important too in driving change in the sector.
And very much, what that is about also, it relates to what we are discussing here, that when I talk about inconsistency, that is also to say that there is some really good practice out there. There is some really good practice in the local government sector. And part of what I do in my role as Ombudsman is, when I do these inquiries, is to expose that good practice from, this council or that council, and say, actually, you should all be doing that.
Did I just imagine a greyhound coming into shot and walking out again?
A whippet, actually.
A whippet.
A very large whippet from this angle, anyway.
Thank you, Deborah. It's always great you're generous with your time. It's always great to talk about these reports that you bring out, and we look forward to talking more about the complaint handling guide. But in the meantime, your report into financial hardship policies is published online, and we would recommend that everyone working in local government take the time to have a look at what you're recommending. Thanks for your time.